everybody, Dacob here. Welcome back to the Fashion Bunker. Today is a very special review. We have this textured and structured type of cottony canvas that is reminiscent of sands and dunes. Yes, we will be reviewing Christian Dior's Dune pour Homme. It's kind of an interesting thing because, again, I'm going back into the 90s. I am quite obsessed with the 90s lately, and going through my vault and all my perfume collection. Haven't been using this one in a long time, but it's a very special one. Why? Because my father bought this for me. And usually I would have to ask him, if I liked something, then he would think about it and then he would get it for me. But this one, I don't know for what reason. From one of his trips, he just came home with a box, with a present. It was Dior's Dune pour Homme. Unexpected, because I didn't ask him for this fragrance. This was one of those rare occasions where he brought it for me. And I thought that was a really lovely gesture. This was around 2002. The perfume was released in 1997. So it's 5 years after the original release of the fragrance. So it's still pre-reformulation time. And I have a 100 milliliter bottle here. 50 ml are still inside. So this is one of those very, very special pieces I have for my father, who is no longer with us, unfortunately. So for those of you who follow me on YouTube, know this whole story because I did start YouTube while he was still with us. So it's a bit painful for me to go back and I don't know. I don't really rewatch videos prior to 2015 when he passed away. So it's kind of strange for me. I know that these videos of me exist even in the 2014s, but yeah, memories, it's difficult, but I am trying to work on it. And this is also one of the reasons why, I guess subconsciously, I went for digging into my vault and archives just to kind of find bits and pieces of memory from my past. And when I stumbled upon Dune, I remembered a lot of things. And so it was a lot of great memories. And I thought to myself, oh gosh, do I have the strength to do this? Yes, I do. Let's review Dune pour Homme, Christian Dior. The batch number, and I remember my dad at the same time. He never wore this fragrance, by the way. He just thought it would fit me. So I'm wearing it here, and the kind of dry down is there, and I'm going to spray it fresh here for the top notes, but my batch code is 2A01. They repeat approximately every 10 years, so you might find a 2012 date attached to it, but in fact this was around 2002. It still has the older inscription on it. We have the full Christian Dior text on the bottle instead of just the Dior, and we have the concentration of the toilette also on the bottle. This is one of the giveaways that tells you that it's one of an older bottle. I do believe that there was also an even older 1997 version where they would write the actual milliliter quantity at the bottom or here in between. This is already slightly updated bottle version. So let's do that. 2 spritzes is enough. This one is quite powerful for today's standards. Now, mind you, when this one came out in 1997, it was light. It was considered a very sophisticated, light textured, almost like a summery type of scent. Hence the dunes, and hence the advertisement campaign showcasing a male model dressed in very light beige clothes, almost white sandy clothes, open unbuttoned shirt, on his knees on a dune in the middle of the desert or sand or on a beach with a slight breeze, because you could see that the clothes are slightly airy. They're more open. They're not just hanging on him. And that was the first ad campaign. Today, the reformulated version of Dune, I wouldn't say, most brands, when they reformulate things, they get worse. I wouldn't say this one got worse today. Like most other fragrances, it's even softer and lighter perhaps. But let's not, review that. We're going to review the actual formulation of Dune, the first formulation. The original, so to say. So let me breathe in and smell the top notes. They're quite intense. This one also aged very well. It did not go stale in any way. It is extremely fresh. The top notes are sparkling and they're still there. So, and also, how do I keep my fragrances? Well, first of all, I mean, I don't live in a very tropical country. So my humidity levels are usually not so high where I am. And the fashion bunker is actually quite dry and kept dry. So that's a very important factor. And temperatures don't swing abruptly from cold to warm. I know a lot of you put fragrances in refrigerators. I've noticed that actually does more bad than good, because even if you take a fragrance shortly out of the fridge, just spray it on and put it back into the fridge, that's a temperature shock for the fragrance, because out of the cold, it just hits room temperature and then you put it back into the cold. My fragrances live the best when they're just free, when they breathe with me, when they are in room temperature that slowly goes, from hot in summer to cooler in winter, but no abrupt swings. So I'm very happy that the only perfumes that I've had like over 20 years that do tend to, at a certain point, turn over and not be so good in the opening notes are Chanel pure perfumes that are in splash bottles that are openable, so a lot of oxygen comes in, and a lot of other things, pieces of your skin or dust. Especially with Chanel No. 5, the older batches, it can get quite stale in the top notes, but then the bottom notes, the heart notes, the base notes are amazing still. The dry down is always incredible. So that's something to that I've noticed in all of these years of perfume collecting. So, top notes, we have sage, basil, fig leaf, and cassis. Mid notes is rose, mignonette, fig wood bark, cedar, vanilla, tonka bean, and sandalwood in the base notes. So cedar, vanilla, tonka bean, and sandalwood in the base notes. Now this one is a fig leaf, which is in the top notes, and sandalwood, which is in the base notes, composition. Fig leaf and fig bark are right there at the top, even though fig bark is in the mid notes, but it's what is predominantly present here, with the sandalwood taming them in the bottom. As I said, for 90 standards, 1997, so this one was released after Opium pour Homme by Yves Saint Laurent. This one is considered a lighter version of a fragrance. It's very subtle. It's very elegant. It's very nonchalant, if you may. It's very effortless. Even though the way that the different elements of the fig, together with the sandalwood and the tonka bean, how they play together, it has character. And so even though it's very effortless, it can still deliver a punch if you overspray it, because if you overspray this one, or if you don't really spray it in the right way, if you spray it too close to the skin, it can turn a little bit chemical, because a lot of the ingredients in here are synthetic, we of course know. So knowing how to dose this one can create more or less a powdery, sandy effect or touch on the skin. By this, I want to suggest that you spray it from a distance rather than too close to the skin if you want to create the Dune, the full Dune experience. Also, on a clean white shirt, you can put on your buttoned up but open shirt on your skin. Then on your chest, you can spray it from a distance and let it, from a distance, so that the little cloud of perfume also hits the shirt, not just the skin. That way you get a little bit of the perfume on the shirt as well. With cotton, it blends masterfully. In fact, I'm smelling wafts of it because as I was spraying it on my arm here, it hit some of the cotton here. This is, by the way, Vivienne Westwood cotton jacket, really beautiful one, inspired by the Clint Eastwood bomber that she made. It's still in production. This is from the Spring-Summer 19 collection. It's so cool to kind of add fashion with perfumes in this very abstract way in a video. We have a Vivienne Westwood jacket serving us as a dune landscape. The lights are very powerful here and strong, so you don't really see, but also the jacket has, these are printed stains, like oil stains, onto the cotton to create shadows and more used utilitarian feel. Sand is also not completely clean if we're really living on it, and if we're thinking about beaches. If we're thinking about dunes and the desert, of course, not a lot of humans pass by, but there's still a lot of animals. You don't maybe see them at first glance, but they're tiny little creatures, that even snakes, that live and survive and thrive in the desert, as well as in the desert heat. Dune would be one of those creatures. So if you spray it from a distance, you get its presence, but just like in the dunes in the desert, you have to look really closely. You have to zoom in to find life in the middle of that desert. And that's similar. That's the concept of Dune pour Homme by Christian Dior. So, you know, a lot of perfume reviewers talk about longevity, sillage, and I think erroneously many people compare longevity of a fragrance to the longer the longevity is, the better the quality of the fragrance. I could not agree less with that. There are certain perfumes that definitely have a beastly longevity, but, you know, and then some of those perfumes, it's in their nature and it fits the concept of the fragrance to be so powerful in longevity. Other fragrances have incredibly strong longevity, but they're so skanky, they're just not good. The quality of them is not good. There are also perfumes that don't have strong longevity, but are incredible quality, and they're meant to, conceptually, from how they're constructed, to not have long longevity. But then there are also perfumes that have short longevity and that are also bad. So there's a bit of everything everywhere. This is a really good example of a fragrance that doesn't have beastly longevity, but the quality is amazing. And the fact that it doesn't have beastly longevity is good in this case for me, because of the nature of the smell of this perfume. It has a very specific type of warmth in it, almost like a warm, sandy breeze covering you. And it's never overpowering, and it shouldn't be. To add more of sandalwood in here, or some sort of musk, or accentuating the cedar by, I don't know, pumping up the vanilla, adding a Bourbon vanilla, would have damaged the fragrance. It would have added longevity, probably, but it would have killed the delicate balance between the more delicate ingredients like the fig leaf or the fig bark, or even in that case, I mean, you know, there's a rose in here which is detectable from time to time. The mignonette is something very delicate as well. Sage, basil, you know, and the cassis. I mean, with cassis, it's a bit tricky. It's more like cassis is also, you know, you can also have it in a drink. So it's something that you could also taste and smell at the same time. Or you could eat a fig too, but you can't eat a fig leaf, obviously. But it's a delicate balance of ingredients that can really easily be overpowered by the woody and rooty notes in the bottom. So this means that this one needs to have lighter longevity if you want to enjoy all of the levels of this fragrance from top to bottom. Hence, that's why I say it's perfect the way it is. You can reapply throughout the day if you need to. I personally, with this one, really love when it kind of starts fading, and there's a nostalgia to this fragrance dying on your skin. You can almost visualize it as it is laying here on this artificial dune that I created. It kind of lays itself on it, on the sand, and then it slowly gets absorbed by the sand, and the heat from the sun from the top also evaporates all the alcohol and water and all the essential oils, very few of them that are in there. They attach themselves to the sand. So what happens is this sort of evaporation that's between the water and alcohol being extracted from the sand, from the fragrance, and the earth or the sand, the hot sand, pulling in, absorbing the essential oils. When that separation happens, when they detach, that in between is the smell of Dune pour Homme. That's the kind of concept it delivers to me. That's the feel on the skin it gives me. It makes you slightly dizzy. You lose orientation a little bit because the smell, smelling it now, it's bizarre. It does smell like a fragrance, like a perfume, but at the same time, it gives you an illusion of being natural, of being something that just by accident passed through the air as you were on a beach or walking through the city. And that illusion that it kind of makes you forget for a second that you're wearing a fragrance, but nevertheless it smells good, that's magic to me. And what's the name of Olivier Cresp, the perfumer behind this fragrance? I think that's the masterful game happening here, that you forget that you're wearing a perfume, even though you get wafts of it coming out from, you know, your chest area, from the shirt that you're wearing. And then there are other moments when you remember that it's a fragrance. And that's the concept that I was mentioning before of the sand absorbing the essential oils, the heat of the sun sucking out the water and the alcohol, and then the in-between is Dune pour Homme. That in-between is that smell that you sometimes forget is a fragrance. Another thing people mention when they talk about Dune pour Homme is the fact that it is a summer fragrance. Again, I could not agree less. I agree that you can definitely enjoy it in summer, but it is wonderful all year round. It is really good in autumn. As I am making this review, we are at the beginning of autumn. It's officially still summer, but it's cold enough to be autumn. The leaves are already turning, changing color. And those hues of gold and amber and red, and they're going to, you know, head into brown as autumn progresses. A wonderful period to wear this one because, again, fragrances are memory. And no other fragrance up until now, I mean, as of now, has not delivered a concept of kind of a memory of a dune, a nostalgia of a dune. And that nostalgia, you can smell out the summer in this one, even though it's autumn. And that is the beauty of it because, well, you feel and you allow yourself to feel the loss. Summer that is passing, the memory of it, you know, experiences you've had. This one is a very comforting, lulling type of memory. It sings to you of something that is gone. And it tells you that it is okay to be sad about it. But it also gives you hope because it tells you a new summer will come the next year. And so carrying with you that hope is a beautiful thing. And that's why this fragrance is really very good also in the coldest of winters. When it hits the dry down, this one in particular does not really go that extremely woodsy route. It actually tends to veer back to the top notes. It becomes greener. There's that mid-time in the mid-section or portion of the lifespan of this fragrance on the skin when you feel the warmth of the sandalwood. But as the last of the dry downs kicks in, it turns again. It's from that warm sandalwood, almost golden streak, it hits a green tone again. And we're back to a sagey, like sage / fig leaf. I don't want to say DNA, but I want to say characteristic of the fragrance, which can at times not be what you're looking for, because I'm so used to and I love when my fragrances hit the dry down that they kind of go into that warm area and that they hit that soft warm spot that I adore. This one doesn't. So sometimes I'm unpleasantly surprised because I wanted to hit the warmth, but it doesn't. But then sometimes I think to myself, that is actually quite revolutionary because it veers and turns. It's as if that dune in the middle of this desert, when you just think that the heat is going to take over, all of a sudden a sandstorm happens or the wind starts blowing and it blows away the whole construction. And you have that kind of wind of sand that lifts everything again. And underneath it, we discover all those little creatures underneath that sand, all those little tiny insects and creatures that we couldn't see at first glance when we overlooked the entire desert. And they have a different type of smell than the rest of that dune and that sand. And they are more green. And there's more a wet sort of life in them because they absorb water too. They need water to sustain and live, to sustain themselves and survive in the desert heat. So it's a fascinating game when it turns into that greeny notes towards the dry down, because it becomes almost effervescent, but stale effervescent. It's not powerful, you know. It's very, very, very subtle, and it stays very close to the skin. And as it dries down, you get a memory of how actually powerful the green notes were in the opening touches of the perfume. The liquid itself is a beigey color, just like the entire, I would say, sales campaign for it, just as are all the colors used in the composition of the ad. Let me smell it again. It's a beautiful Dior fragrance that doesn't try too hard. And this one was released right before the whole Dior HOMME, concept exploded on the Dior landscape. It was also released right before, a couple of years before, the Dior Privé line with Eau Noire, Cologne Blanche, and Bois d'Argent were released. So this one paved the way in many ways. This one is a connection. It's like a bridge between, it bridges the gap between the Diors that we know from the 70s, 80s, and 90s to the Diors of the 2000s. This is the missing link. It has a little bit of that nature of a more sophisticated Privé type of fragrance. It definitely does. This is kind of like a Dior Privé, could be, if it were a bit less mass produced in terms of its composition. And it's also linked to the past of Dior, to all the 70s and 80s fragrances. So to me, it's definitely a must try, at least. You don't have to love it. But historically speaking, it's a very important perfume because it does link to very distinct and separate epochs and decades. Thank you guys so much. I hope you like this review. Thank you to my dad as well. Thumb up this video if you liked it. And if you haven't already but wish to, consider subscribing to my channel here on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm also on Patreon, superdacob all spelled together. I would like to thank my patrons for helping the channel survive and grow. Thank you very much. Also, don't forget to check out my Ask Dacob new show that is now on YouTube, where you get to call in live and talk to me about all sorts of topics, questions that interest you, and we record that and then we show that on my YouTube channel. Thank you guys. I shall see you in my next video. Until then, never forget to never give up on love. See you soon. Take care. Bye.